Hi folks, John Dunn here, RPG freelancer, publisher behind Melior Via. I am up here today at Immortals Inc. with Mikey.
What is up, John? What is going on today?
I thought we'd take an adventure through time today, Mikey.
Okay, time is never ending.
It's also, well, maybe.
Maybe, unless
Nice.
you watch Loki.
Yeah, Loki definitely had some interactions, but we're going to go a little older school than Loki and talk Doctor Who today.
Nice.
We've mentioned this before, but this is a source book for Doctors and Daleks, which is the 5e compatible-ish iteration of the Doctor Who role-playing game from Cubicle 7.
Nice.
And specifically today, we're going to talk about Alien Archive. And Alien Archive is basically the monster manual for Doctors and Daleks. There was a big team that worked on this for Cubicle 7. I counted 4 designers and 8 credited authors in addition to that, so a whole lot of people going on. It is largely 5th edition compatible, so Doctors and Daleks kind of changes the 5e SRD a little bit because Doctor Who isn't usually a combat-focused show.
Yeah.
Usually there's more going to be talking going on and a lot of running away rather than fisticuffs. So the game tweaks kind of reflect that. And Immortals does carry the full line of the game. But I want to point out that the reason I'm talking about this book is because you might want to use it with more than just Doctors and Daleks. This is a 5e compatible product. So if you want to introduce some of the alien species from Doctor Who into another 5e game, like, say, Dungeons and Dragons, this book will suit you just fine.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so those stat blocks are standard SRD stat blocks in here, in addition to having a couple of the optional things that are suited towards Doctors and Daleks. So I think that's a really useful tool. I think that's kind of got a peanut butter and chocolate combination here. Where we've got,
you could say that.
yeah, you got some Doctor Who in my D&D.
Have you ever played in a campaign where you had a DM incorporate something like this? Where it's
absolutely.
Do you have an example in mind at all?
I mean, going back and forth, I ran a game where we stuck Battlestar Galactica into another campaign setting, or reached out and grabbed Star Wars and tossed it in with some Shadowrun.
I feel like that's always so fun to do.
Yeah, you can do all kinds of stuff like that, and this book is eminently well suited for that. I also want to point out that I don't think anyone drew anything for this book. It is all the imagery in there are stills and promo shots from the series. So there's some beautiful images in there from that. Working our way through the book, the first part is an intro. It talks a little bit about the different aliens that are present in Doctor Who, talks a little bit about the changes that are there from Doctors and Daleks to Dungeons and Dragons, or from D&D to D&D, right? And notes that all these creatures are intended to be 5e SRD compatible. So like I said, there are some tweaks for the Doctors and Daleks rules system, but the monster stat blocks as presented will work just fine for Dungeons and Dragons. Then there's also some tips in here if you are a Doctors and Daleks player for converting monsters from other SRD materials to use them in that campaign. So say you want to drop a dragon in your Doctor Who campaign, you can absolutely do that.
Okay, that'd be kind of wild.
The other thing that jumped out at me as kind of relevant here is that pretty much all of these alien species are, cultures, right? In much the same way that orcs or kobolds or any of your other D&D monstrous races are species. So if you wanted to use these as player characters, races, you've got everything you need.
Right? Probably a lot of stuff in there then.
There's a lot of stuff in here. And the monsters that are in here draw from a broad range. So you get lots of the different alien races that feature in the modern Doctor Who, but there's a few that go back to the classic series. One that jumped out at me were the crinoids from the 4th Doctor area. Crinoids are carnivorous plants.
Plants.
But they're not carnivorous plants like a Venus flytrap that just sits there. No, they're carnivorous plants that get up and walk around in a humanoid fashion and find animals and eat them.
Okay, so like skinwalking plants.
Essentially, yeah.
Nice.
Kind of cool. There are 32 different sections. Each section basically covers a alien species. And you get a background on each of them. You get tips on using them in a campaign, designing scenarios around them, and, some very clear story ideas. Of course, if you have any of the Doctor Who story guides that we've talked about in the past, or the books that went through the different Doctor's story arcs, that's going to give you a lot more detail than this. But this gives you really all the information you need if you wanted to start incorporating this into a campaign that wasn't Doctor Who centric. This would be a one-stop shop. You could just grab this book and go. The longest two monsters are probably the two most prominent creatures from Doctor Who. Did you ever watch Doctor Who, Mikey?
No, remember we touched on it?
That's right.
I've only seen bits and pieces.
So the Daleks are the kind of iconic Doctor Who villain. That's the reason the game's named Doctors and Daleks, right? And they're more or less robots with an alien kind of driving it on the inside.
Okay.
There's 35 pages of this book are devoted to Daleks, and you get 12 different stat blocks for them. Cybermen are basically cyborgs, right? Another alien species-ish. You get 20 pages on Cybermen and 10 stat blocks on them too. So these iconic villains are thoroughly presented here, and you do get different versions of them to reflect the way that they've been presented across the 60-ish, maybe more, 60-ish years of Doctor Who history. And there's really a great blending of that classic information along with the more modern era retellings. I think Silurians may be the best example of that aren't the Daleks and the Cybermen, because Silurians are basically lizard people that had evolved during the age of the dinosaurs, right? And they were presented in a number of different ways in the classic series and in the modern series, and all of those different versions are presented right here.
Sweet.
Along with stills from the show in the different eras, so you can see just how different they looked in some of those different incarnations. I thought it was really well done.
Nice.
Another race that jumped out at me is really cool, and I liked the way they did the game mechanics for it, are the Weeping Angels. Have you heard of them?
Dude, are they like, you ever play Left 4 Dead?
I haven't, but...
Yeah, there's like a witch and she just cries, and like she's a bait, basically.
So that's a reasonable guess, but the Weeping Angels are basically cemetery angel statues.
Wow.
And so they look exactly like a statue anytime you're looking at them. But when you're not looking at them and they're not being observed, they can move around. So when it's dark out, they can just slaughter people.
Oh, so they're hostile.
They're extremely hostile.
Great.
But as long as they're observed, they can't do anything.
A marble serial killer.
The way that they broke down the game mechanics for that, for enabling them to move and not move, I think was really well done. Seems like a lot of fun. The Ood are another race from the modern Doctor Who retelling, that they're basically a slave race, but they happen to be incredibly powerful and incredibly vulnerable psychics, and that's done in just a fun way too. We've got the Jadoon, which are kind of a burly anthropomorphic rhinoceros race. They've got some fun mechanics too. And then really, like I said, there's this consistent theme that almost all of these species that are presented are humanoid, and you've got entire cultures of them. And this could also give your player characters opportunities to travel to their worlds or worlds they've colonized, which maybe if you're running a D&D campaign, they might do that through a little dimensional travel or tying it into your Spelljammer game or your Planescape game. Yeah, absolutely. Both of those would be great fits.
Interplanetary
If you're
airport.
interested in either one of those campaign styles, this is a fantastic source book to grab. It is 192 pages, Cubicle 7, full color interior, it's hardcover, and it's $45. We've got it on the shelf here at Immortals Inc. or immortalsinc.com.
Well said, John. Couldn't have said it better myself. Check it out. Make sure you join us, like and subscribe. See you guys next time.
Till next time, folks. Good gaming.